Hare Krishna, and welcome to Fact or Fiction Friday. And today we are going to be discussing COVID-19 vaccines. And we have with us two experts in this field, and I'd like to introduce them. First, I'd like to introduce Madhavananda Prabhu. He's been a medical doctor for the last 32 years, and he's a well-known pediatrician in the northern region of Mumbai, and right now he is the director of the Bhaktivedanta Hospital and Research Institute, which is a 200-bed hospital many of us as devotees in ISKCON are familiar with. He's the director of 6 other units of the hospital throughout Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh. And so the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, it is a standard hospital, but also has, if I recall, Prabhu, it has Ayurvedic offerings and homeopathic offerings. And what else are some of the other offerings that you offer in the hospital?
There is naturopathy, there is even acupuncture, and of course our specialty is spiritual care.
Yes, spiritual care. The hospital has won many awards, and we feel very privileged to have Madhavananda Prabhu with us. We also have with us today Shyam Gopi Devi Dasi. She is a PhD in biochemistry and presently a research scientist at the Rush University Medical Center in the Department of Internal Medicine in Chicago in the USA. Her expertise, and I hope I pronounce this right, is in molecular pathogenesis of infectious diseases. So she's been in that field for 16 years and has worked on deadly organisms such as anthrax, pneumonia, cholera, and many other such diseases. She's written 30 publications that have been published in highly reputable medical journals, and she is currently actively involved in studying the effects of COVID-19 and specifically on the kidney function. So we welcome these two wonderful Vaishnava and Vaishnavi to Fact or Fiction Friday. And I have a number of questions that we've gathered from devotees all over the ISKCON world. And I will let's see if we can cover them all. And are we ready to go? Yes?
Sure.
Okay. So first one, tell us about the vaccines available all around the world. And specifically, what are their pros? What are the cons? And what do we know about their effectiveness?
Whom do you want to start first?
Why don't you start, Madhavananda Prabhu?
Shyamagopi, you want to take it?
Prabhu, please, you start.
Okay. So it's a big list. Almost there are 10 vaccines, and all of them are right now under sort of they're just coming in the market, and some of them have finished the phase 3 trials also. So I'll just go one by one with some kind of country-wise distribution, what are the possible side effects, and overall effectiveness.
Okay, and let's keep this really casual. Shyam Gopi, if you want to add something, just go ahead.
Yeah. So, say first one is Pfizer Biotech. Now, this is a RNA vaccine. It is right now approved, and trials are going on UK, US, Germany. Then there is Moderna vaccine, which is a RNA vaccine. Again, US, Europe, and UK. AstraZeneca, Oxford, Covishield. That is right now. I took my 1 dose of Covishield just 15 days back. So this is UK, Argentina, India, Mexico, Brazil, Pakistan. Novavax, US, UK, and South Africa. Johnson & Johnson, it's a viral vector. US, Latin America, and South Africa. Sinovac is an inactivated vaccine. China, Indonesia, and Brazil. Sputnik 5, viral vector vaccine. It is available in Russia.
Sounds very Russian.
Middle East. And CanSino is again a viral vector. China and Saudi Arabia. And Sinopharm is an inactivated vaccine. China, UAE, Peru, Morocco. And Covaxin is again inactivated vaccine, is produced by India's Bharat Biotech, available in India right now. All these vaccines, because I didn't specify about the adverse effects which people want to know about it, because most of them will have some adverse effects. And the efficacy, again, we are worried about whether they are effective really. So none of the vaccines will be allowed to be tried or injected unless they have at least 50% efficacy. None of the vaccines. So most vaccines which I spoke about, they are, say, Pfizer, Moderna, about 95% efficacy they are saying. Novavax, Astra, Covishield is 70%. Covaxin is also 70%. Novavax 89%. The lowest amongst this group is Sinovac, which is 50%, and Sinopharm 79%. So in general, everyone is above 70%. And some of them are 90 to 95%. So good efficacy. As far as the adverse events, yes, some adverse events are there, like the pain at the injection site, some fever, some kind of headache, sometimes nausea, vomiting, sometimes some allergic reactions. So these are the broad categories for most of the vaccines. None of the vaccines have shown any dangerous side effects, because if any dangerous side effects come, the vaccine will be discarded. So this is what I would say all over the world, this is what is available right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Sham Gopi, would you like to add anything to what Prabhuji just said?
Prabhu said a comprehensive list, and actually I had a table saying everything what Prabhu had said. And as Prabhu rightly mentioned, that FDA actually approves any vaccine that has more efficacy. It has to cross that standard of 50% efficacy. So any vaccine that is above 50%, the vaccine is approved by FDA. So vaccine has to be effective, it has to be safe, and it has to be affordable. So because you asked about the pros and cons, so the Pfizer and the Moderna, because they are based on the mRNA technology, so mRNA molecule is very unstable. So that is why these vaccines have to be stored at ultra low temperatures, which could present a challenge in global distribution, especially in the developing countries. But the same thing with AstraZeneca, because it's a DNA-based molecule and DNA is quite rugged and very sturdy and stable molecule. The vaccines that deal with either whole viral particle, as Covaxin is, and other vaccines as Madhavananda Prabhu mentioned, and even AstraZeneca Covishield that is available in India, they don't require that ultra low temperatures for storage. So I think that would be the to-go vaccine for the low or middle income countries. But again, then we have to compromise on the efficacy, because AstraZeneca vaccine reports little lower efficacy as compared to the Pfizer and Moderna, which are like 95% effective. So these are some of the things that I want to add on to Madhavananda Prabhu's.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
So these vaccines, as we all know, were created in like a record short amount of time. So what does that mean in terms of their trustworthiness? You know, because usually it takes 5 years, they say, or 10 years, and these are
5
like
to 10 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So what would you say is what if someone had a question? Well, gosh, yeah, how much can I trust this? It was done so quickly.
So the first we have to know the uniqueness of this COVID episode. This is the first time in the history of last 100 years, maybe, that we were facing something which we didn't know what it is, how it is producing a disease, what exactly happens, and how it passed and through what mechanisms it spreads. Like everything was completely confusing. Even the WHO and the big epidemiologists, they were changing their statements every now and then as they were getting new findings. So something of that sort, which became a pandemic in today's world, with so much of medical advancement, to have a pandemic, the organism has to be really completely unknown to us. So this is what exactly COVID-19 virus was. And the other part is that there was nothing like that before. So what works was always a question mark. Even till today, really people don't know what works, because they have been giving remdesivir, they have given Fabiplu, sometimes just zinc and supportive therapy. And yes, we could manage the complications and save many lives. But those who came late or they had comorbidities, they succumbed in spite of the best efforts. So with all this situation, there was a need that a vaccine has to be there. So a global kind of all the scientists, medical epidemiologists, infectious disease specialists, they all came together. So there was a good, you can say, community of all these people, researchers, everyone, who came together and they were helping each other with data. It's not that somebody in one particular company is, quietly doing some research and trying to take over the market. Nothing like that. They were sharing the information. So that is because the whole world was facing this unique disease where either you have a vaccine or just wait and let the whole world collapse with economically and otherwise. So therefore everything got fast forwarded, everything. And that's how this vaccine has come out within a year's time. And it doesn't mean that the proper protocols are not followed. Yes, I would agree that probably the data which should have been X, maybe X minus something. So it is not as big as, but the situation demands that we should have something which is immediately available. And that's why within 1 year, they have come out with a vaccine. So in fact, we should congratulate all the scientists and the researchers and the doctors and whoever has contributed to this, that they could come out and they have helped each other. It's not that they are quietly working. Somebody took one technology, they worked on it, they pulled in data. So a lot of cooperation happened internationally, and that was a good sign because the enemy was common.
Thank you. Sham Gopi Devi, as a researcher, what would you like to add to that?
Yes, definitely. So as you already rightly said, that vaccines generally take 5 to 10 years, like a decade or sometimes even 2 decades to develop. So this COVID vaccine was developed in an unprecedented time, 11 months or so. So did the speed actually compromise? It is natural to have that skepticism and that suspicion because of the unprecedented speed in which the vaccine was developed. So I just want to make a point here that since vaccines are given to healthy people, unlike medications, which are given to sick people, there is always a higher standard of safety that is expected from the vaccines as compared to the other pharmaceutical products. So when researchers are designing the vaccines, they definitely have the safety and the efficacy both as their top priorities. So I would say there were 4 things that actually led to an accelerated development of this vaccine. And the 4 things I would just like to make a bullet point as a summary to what Madhavananda Prabhu had already said. So first is they used a new technology. And the new technology was the mRNA-based vaccine, which is totally new. So traditionally, the vaccines would use a weakened virus or a protein piece of it. But to grow that virus and the protein piece in the laboratory, it was a cumbersome effort. You have to grow the virus or the protein piece of it in eggs or in cells. And that would take a lot of time and need a lot of safety approvals, which will extend the time frame for which the vaccine has to be made. But in this new generation mRNA vaccines, actually, they neither use the virus, they don't even use the protein piece of the virus. What they do is they use the information that codes for that protein piece, and they inject that information into our body, and they use our body as a system to make that protein. So basically, the job that was done in the laboratory, now our body is doing that job. So that is one thing that has accelerated the new technology, as Madhavananda Prabhu said, that their uniqueness of the technology. The second thing was that different phases in the trial for any vaccine development, they generally happen sequentially. One phase gets over, then the second phase starts. But in this case, all the phases were overlapped actually, because as Madhavananda Prabhu already said, that the nature that the pandemic presented to the world, like its socio and economic impact on the nations. So it was an urgent need to do that. And the third point, I would say that the swift and efficient recruitment of the volunteers for the clinical trials. And the fourth point is something the pharmaceutical companies, what they did was high risk manufacturing. So what that means is that when the vaccine is being evaluated for its efficacy and safety, the companies wait for the data to analyze that data and then start production of the manufacture, then start the production of doses. But here what they did is something called as at-risk manufacturing. So what happens is even before the data was either analyzed or completely approved, the companies started to produce the vaccine doses with the risk that if the vaccine comes out to be ineffective or unsafe, all the doses will be thrown in the drain basically. But the upside is that if the vaccine comes out to be safe and effective, it is immediately available for distribution to the public. So these 4 points: new technology, overlapping of the clinical trial phases instead of sequentially, they are overlapping. The third is recruitment of patient volunteers very efficiently. And the fourth thing is high risk manufacturing. So I would say these 4 points actually accelerated the development of the vaccine. And as Madhavananda Prabhu said, that there were no corners that were cut by the researchers, or as people say, that the clinical trials were not done or the animal trials were not done, which comprise of preclinical trials. Everything was done properly, and safety and efficacy were their top priority. So
thank you. Well, while we're on that topic, let me ask you, Sham Gopi Devi, because I think this is your field. Could you explain what the mRNA vaccine is? Does it, change our genetic code?
yes, thank you, Vraja Vihari Prabhu. This is a very, very valid question, and I see it totally because this is a new technology. There are concerns that it is going to cause an eternal genetic disorder that we have to live with it forever. So I actually want to show a little presentation over here, like a little slide that can explain this very visually and very scientifically. So as per the fundamentals of science, any textbook you can open, and you can see that mRNA actually can never access our DNA. And how that happens is, I'm going to explain this if you all can see this. So let's start with the basic biochemistry, little science over here, but it's very interesting. So you see over here that every cell in our body has two components, a nucleus and a cytoplasm. And DNA, which carries the blueprint or the instructions to produce proteins in our body, that particular DNA, that blueprint, that the code, the instructions for everything that our body needs is actually stored as a DNA molecule inside the nucleus. You can see over here, like a blue circle lined by two circles over here. That's
Gotcha. That's on top. On top, you're talking
on
about.
the top, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So that is DNA, which is inside this nucleus. So what happens is our body needs proteins, right? But the DNA by itself cannot make proteins. So how does the information that is coded in the DNA gets actually translated into the proteins? Because it's not possible in the nucleus. So what happens is, it happens by a molecule which is called as messenger RNA. So as the name suggests, messenger RNA, in our philosophy of Krishna consciousness, that we have to act as a messenger, as a postman. So this messenger RNA molecule, actually what it does is, it copies the information from the DNA that is required for protein synthesis. And after it copies that information in this green little zigzag thing you can see over here, it also travels outside the nucleus into the cytoplasm. And from the cytoplasm, actually, the protein synthesis happens. So you can see over here that the mRNA actually is decoded into proteins, and this process is called as translation. So there are two things over here. If you see on the bottom panel here, what the mRNA vaccine does, actually, it does exactly the same thing what I explained. So you see the viral particle on the left here with green spike proteins on the outer surface of the virus. So what happens is, this mRNA vaccine that Pfizer or Moderna, they copy this genetic information and encapsulate it in the lipid nanoparticle and deliver it straight into the cytoplasm. So as you see over here, this light green, fluorescent green mRNA molecule that encodes for the viral spike protein. And the green protein that is made over here is the spike protein of the virus. So now the two things that we have to always remember. First thing is that as soon as any messenger RNA makes the protein, the life span of messenger RNA in the cytoplasm is very, very short. Like it can last only up to few minutes to maybe 30, maybe half an hour, something like that. It's very, very unstable. So the moment it makes these protein, either this pink protein or this viral protein, the mRNA is actually degraded. So by the enzymes which are called as ribonucleases, they are like scissor-like enzymes, you can say, and they cut the mRNA into small pieces, you can see over here. So the genetic material that is delivered by these vaccines actually does not even stay in our system for a long time. And even though if you say that they are staying there for a few minutes or few hours, then we have to understand that this messenger RNA, in order to go back into the nucleus and integrate into our nucleus or into our DNA, it has to have two enzymes. So mRNA, in order to get converted into DNA, there is an enzyme called as reverse transcriptase, which is not present in our body. So Krishna is smart. He didn't make that enzyme. So this mRNA can never be converted into DNA. And for DNA to go inside the nucleus and integrate into our genome, there is an enzyme that is needed, which is called as integrase. So neither of these two enzymes, reverse transcriptase or integrase, are present in human body. So it is totally misleading to say that these mRNA vaccines actually can alter our DNA. The mRNA and DNA actually are spatially separated in our body, and there is no way that they can alter our genetic code. So I would request humbly everybody to go into the textbooks and look at this information and see that how messenger RNA vaccines are pretty safe and they have no effect on our DNA. So
Thank you for that. I tried to follow it, and I almost did, but but thank you very much. So now I have a kind of a personal question for the two of you, because you're both devotees, and I think as devotees, especially as followers of Prabhupada, we tend to have some natural distrust for some parts of society. You know, if you type in the words "for defects" into Vedabase, you know, the tendency to commit mistakes, to be illusioned, to have imperfect senses, to cheat others. We find in Vedabase 162 references to those two words put together. So, and for for some of us at least, that distrust sometimes trickles down to government, sometimes to big, what do they call it? Big pharma? Is that what they call it? Big pharmacy companies. So, as devotees who are really part of the medical system, how do you deal with that? Does it create cognitive dissonance in you, or you don't see a contradiction? You know, how do you deal? You know, it's kind of a personal question. How do you personally do your profession and do it well, and at the same time have this backdrop of the four defects and sometimes, not always, but sometimes Prabhupada's statements about distrust in things in the material world. Madhavananda, you want to talk first on that?
Okay, so it's a philosophical question, not a medical question in one sense. So one is that as devotees, how I look at it is that we need to be pragmatic whenever we are dealing with such things. So as ISKCONites, yes, we have many ideas which are like so etched on the stone. It's like, you know, say for example, the position of demigods. Like, so the demigods, that means we don't even look at them. Something like that. Or the Mayavadis are almost like enemies. So these are kind of things which they are not said in any forum in these kind of words, but it has happened. So with all those kind of things, to take a new look at it, it will require some trust in somebody. Because we trusted Prabhupada completely, whatever he said, you know, it has entered our hearts. But Prabhupada also always said the one single phrase that do the needful. Whenever there is any confusion about how to do a particular thing, so scriptures say a particular thing and then practically something else is happening, then the answer will always be pragmatic, do the needful. So it's a more or less a philosophical dilemma of mistrusting practically everything other than ISKCON says. So it's like that.
Okay.
So for us, every other sampradaya or everyone else who claims to be a sort of a transcendentalist, unless proved otherwise, he might be a Mayavadi, something like that. I'm just making it a little bit more elaborate, and then coming to the point of going a little bit on a pragmatic way.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are talking of these philosophical convictions, that, say, for example, when we opened the hospital, Bhaktivedanta Hospital, so it was always considered as Prabhupada always opposed philanthropy. So there was a lot of opposition within ISKCON circles for the hospital. But now we see that our hospital is actually helping people to Vaishnavas, particularly. One of the goals of Bhaktivedanta Hospital is Vaishnava Seva. So practical application is little different. Similarly, yes, we do agree that in the material world people are selfish, and the big pharma or any industry or governments, they exist because they want to make money. So these are all realistic things. At the same time, there is a other side of the story that there is goodness in the world, and there are scientists who are genuinely working hard for saving people's lives, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we put our trust? It will be weighed on scientific facts which we have, like Shama Gopi just now gave beautifully the whole presentation. I don't know how many people will understand it, but the fact is that at least she has in-depth knowledge of what she's talking. So better we trust her. Either we ourselves get into the details of it, or just accept what she's saying, considering her credentials. Similarly, the scientists and the companies who are doing research, it is impossible that somebody is fooling so much and making big money. It's impossible. It is not possible. So from that angle, we have heard about these vaccines, and there's a lot of rumors. Say, for example, one of the vaccines, the social media rumor was that it is produced by the unborn calf cells. So, it was like a cow was brought in to, demonize that vaccine. That actually the fetus or the unborn calf is taken out, and the cells from that is taken to produce this vaccine, which is totally false, because it came to me also. So like that, many rumors are there, and based on those rumors, without going into the depth of and validation of the data, sometimes because we are so easily enamored by the fact that, oh, these are all demons, so everything is demonic. So therefore, we tend to trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, including the coronavirus, like there are so many theories that coronavirus was produced and it was a plan of the big demoniac people to, put the world in trouble for some kind of gains which are commercial or maybe at the geopolitical level, all that. While there might be some truth in it, but the fact is that coronavirus is not unreal. We have seen it. It has affected people. Our own people have died, and we have treated patients, so we know how even young people, when they come late in their course of disease, they have succumbed in front of us in spite of all the efforts we did. And given these facts, if I may say so, if I'm getting a little corona, either I get a corona disease Or I am told when you are healthy, I will give you a little corona. And so that you know how to deal with it. So what the vaccine is doing is basically giving a little corona in some way or other, either as a killed vaccine or as a mRNA vaccine or something else, or a vector vaccine. With that, if I'm ready as a healthy individual to deal with my future big disease, it's not that every vaccine gives you 100% immunity. In spite of getting vaccine, you may still have the disease. But the outcome will be much better if I know the virus already. So I would say there are many devotees I have faced with myself here also. Even the routine vaccination of, say, the injectable polio vaccine and the DPT vaccine, they have not given. Many people don't give MMR vaccine. But as a doctor, we know that when I was doing my, say, MD, so we had a ward of infectious disease. And in the infectious disease ward, when July month will come, July to September, we would convert the whole infectious disease ward. In fact, all the beds were reserved only for polio virus. We would get sometimes 10, 15, 20 patients who are admitted for polio. And today, we don't see any polio. We don't see any smallpox. These are the realities. They are facts. People were dying of meningitis. And the US introduced the HIV vaccine because it was major cause. And it dropped. It dropped. Today, people are not dying of it. So there are many, many scientific details which are available if you want to validate the data. But just because we are convinced that these people are demoniac, therefore we will not take the vaccine or we suspect the vaccine. That's not the correct way of looking at it. And I would urge that the devotees who can probably change their mindset, we cannot force it, look at it, okay, we are at high risk because of either age or because of some comorbidities, and we need to be protected. Take a vaccine when you are healthy. So once you are already affected, then okay, you can say that I got a natural immunity, but in that natural immunity course, you may succumb yourself. So my request to the devotees would be, if you have vaccine available to you, and if it has shown good efficacy, it has gone through the trials, which most of the vaccines which we listed out, they all have gone through. Take the vaccine. Yes, there will be some side effects which every other vaccine, any vaccine you take in the childhood also has some side effects. And those side effects which are, some people do not tolerate a particular vaccine, they should not take it again. But when you are healthy, take that dose and be safe. So this is what I would say as a devotee.
Thank you. Sham Gopi, what would you like to add to this question?
Vraja Vihari Prabhu, it's such a sweet question on a personal level. Actually, being a scientist, I'm always accosted by this question from so many people. So I just want to add, as Madhavananda Prabhu already beautifully said, that we tend to demonize everything actually. So when we talk about 4 defects, as you said, that when we type into the Veda base, we get 162 references out that we have tendency to commit mistakes, we cheat others, illusion, and everything else. So when we talk about these 4 defects, I feel the context there is to highlight that our senses are very limited and imperfect to attain the information about the ultimate reality. And for that, we must turn to scriptural sources like Shastras, basically, when we are talking about ultimate reality and the ultimate purpose. But when we are talking about this material world, I personally see, I don't uncritically reject the discoveries and innovations just because they are coming out from the minds of those who have the 4 defects. I see them positively in 3 ways, basically. I would say that I see them in 3 ways. I see them as, first is manifestation of Lord's completeness. I see them as manifestation of Lord's compassion. And I see them as essential resources. So I just want to briefly touch on each of the point very briefly. So how do I see them as manifestation of Lord's completeness, these innovations and these discoveries? So we have this principle from Ishopnishad, like Om Purna the Purnam Idam, right? So that the Lord is perfect and complete, and whatever emanates from the Lord is also perfect and complete. So from the spiritual perspective, the senses that Krishna has given us are perfect and complete to attain the perfection of life, basically. But when we are talking about like from a material perspective, our senses may not be ultimately perfect, but they may be functionally perfect. So, for example, like I can give you an example right now as we are talking to each other, the language in which we are communicating is English, right? So, the teacher who taught me English had the four defects. Me, the student who learned the language, also had the four defects. And the language that was taught to me, I'm sure I'm committing so many mistakes right now. It's not my first language. And also, the language itself must have had some defects, right? But we did not reject that knowledge. Like, just because our senses are imperfect, it doesn't mean that they are completely useless. We are using it for a functional purpose of communicating with each other. So, as Madhavananda Prabhu said, that it is actually very like it's actually impossible to live and function in this world if we operate on the principle of complete distrust on the senses. It's like really impossible. Like while driving a car, if you see a pothole, you cannot say that, oh, my eyes are defective, there's no pothole. So, I mean, it's actually very, very like it's unlikely that we function on that principle in our day-to-day life. That was one point actually. So I see that as Krishna's completeness, basically, that Krishna has given us these senses so that we can function sufficiently enough in this world, which is required to acquire the level of knowledge that will help us to go around in this world. So this is Krishna's compassion that brings us to the second point actually. So in 15:15 Krishna says, right, like mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha, that I am the source of knowledge, remembrance and forgetfulness. And also in 7:8 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says porusham rishu, I am the ability in man. So as Madhavananda Prabhu says that there are genuine scientists in the world who are working for the welfare of people. So I see these medical advancements and innovations that are produced by these scientists, I see that as a divine grace that is bestowed on them by Krishna in the form of inspiration and intelligence. So this is Krishna's compassion on those devoted and dedicated scientists. So not everything we have to demonize, like we have to utilize. That is the basic foundation of bhakti. And as you said, right, like bringing me to the third point, like as you said that we are Prabhupada Nugas, we are followers of Prabhupada. So whether it is Ayurveda or whether it is allopathy, everything comes out after extensive research and experimentation. So, and as doctors, like Madhavananda Prabhu is there, who is like very exalted devotee, who's going to administer us these doses, like, or these medicines or these pharmaceutical products. So whether the devotees are doctors or they are not doctors, they may not necessarily be free from four defects, but we take that treatment, right? Even Prabhupada himself took medicines and treatments, allopathy, Ayurveda, both whenever required, right? So, and if Prabhupada had complete distrust on medical science, he wouldn't have taken those treatments. And moreover, Prabhupada himself engaged in a profession that was pharmacy, right? Prabhupada had that as a profession. So if Prabhupada knew that everything was cheating and there is no healing, he wouldn't have engaged himself in such a business, right?
Well,
So
let me ask you this then, Sham Gopi, because we're getting a number of questions about this. What about the content of the vaccines? Naturally, some devotees may have concerns. We hear, like Madhavananda Prabhu mentioned it briefly about the calf, the calf. But are there embryos? Are there things in these vaccines that contain things that might be objectionable to a devotee? Could you tell us what's in them and which ones may have things, which one may not, what the nature of those, what contents is?
sure. Thank you, Vraja Vihari Prabhu, for this question. And I totally see that this is a great concern among devotees, as Madhavananda Prabhu said, that a cow is brought and the cells are taken from the fetus. And so there is a concern that vaccine contains immoral and illicit biological components from the fetuses, aborted fetuses, basically. So my basic answer is that COVID-19 vaccines do not contain any aborted fetuses or their tissues in the vaccine preparation. So Pfizer has released their ingredient list. Like, it's very technical. I can go into all that, but anybody can just look into the ingredients of the vaccine. So just to go back with the little history, we have to actually understand to understand this whole concept, we have to understand difference between a cell line and a tissue. So going back to little history, like in 1972, there were two abortions that actually took place in Netherlands. And what okay, mind it when I say that they were not done. These abortions were not done for the purpose of vaccine development. They were completely legal and elective termination of pregnancies. But what happened was that the scientists over there actually isolated some cells from the tissue of those aborted fetuses, and they grew those cells in the laboratory. Now this happened in 1972. So over these like 4 and 5 decades, these cells have continued to grow in the laboratory. They continue to divide and multiply into many new cells. And these cells are thousands and thousands of generation away from the original fetal tissue. So the cells were isolated from the fetus, but the cells have been grown substantially for a long time in the laboratory. And the scientists actually do use these cells, like, so there is no shying away from the fact that scientists use these cells, which are called as cell lines. So there is no tissue involved, there is no ongoing abortions involved, there is no additional demand of new fetus that is involved. So scientists do use these cells for testing the efficacy of the virus. And as Vraja Vihari Prabhu, you asked about which vaccines do use it, which do not. So actually, AstraZeneca vaccine is grown in these cells, which are called as HEC293. So you can, Google is a bad place to look for all these informations. But in case you want to see, you can see HEC293. It's called as human embryonic kidney. So because these cells were isolated from the fetus, which was aborted in 1972 from their renal tissue, basically. So they are called as kidney cells. So AstraZeneca viral vaccine is actually grown in these cells. They have used these cells to test their efficacy. But then it is misleading to say that the vaccine contains the fetal tissue. As I already explained, that fetal tissue is very different than the cells that have come out of the fetal tissue. So when the vaccines are purified from these fetal cell lines, actually they are purified using an extensive stringent protocol. So there is no room left for the presence of any human material that is present in the purified vaccines. So my standard answer would be that none of the COVID-19 vaccines, even they are tested on fetal cell lines, or even they are grown in fetal cell lines, they do not contain any aborted fetuses or their tissues in the preparation.
And do some of the vaccines not use that process at all?
Yes, the Pfizer and Moderna wouldn't. Correct.
Okay, so the ones in America don't use them at all. And the other ones, the ones from India and China, and the list that Madhavananda Prabhu read at the beginning, they may have used this process. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not sure, Madhavananda Prabhu, maybe you would know about Covaxin more. I haven't done so much of research on Covaxin. It's
Covaxin is a killed vaccine. Covaxin is a killed vaccine. So they just take the same COVID vaccine, COVID virus, and just the virus is killed. It's a killed vaccine virus. So it doesn't have any efficacy to produce disease, but it produces the immune response.
Which one are you talking about? Which one?
Covaxin.
Okay, and so that means it didn't go through this 1972 cell process, that one?
No. It doesn't have to do anything with that.
Sure.
Most of these vaccines, current vaccines which are using new technology, mRNA technology and all, they are quite sort of ethically produced.
Yes.
Very ethically produced. And even the ethics committees internationally have become stricter and stricter now for how they produce not only vaccine, but any medicine also. Very strict.
So I'm just trying to clarify this so that the devotees know, because you're saying Shamagopi is giving the uniformly, none of the vaccines have like tissues from an aborted fetus, but that at the same time there is this from 1972, and then a cell line was created, and AstraZeneca was done in that way. Do we know which other ones might have been produced in that way, just in case devotees want to make that distinction? Do we know of any?
Sorry, I wouldn't say anything because it would be a speculation, and I really go by the research and the data. So as far as I know, if my memory serves me right, any vaccine that is like adenoviral vector-based vaccine would go through that process, which is like the Sputnik 5 and Johnson & Johnson. But the vaccines, as Madhavananda Prabhu said, the Covaxin and the Novavax, which are like either viral-based or the protein-based, they wouldn't go through that procedure. But I can only talk about AstraZeneca right now. I don't want to speculate. So I would just take it with a pinch of salt. So.
Right.
I don't think any one of us have choice in choosing what vaccine we want as of now. So the most common ones that are in market are either Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca, and Covaxin maybe in India. So
Right. Okay, thank you. So let me go to my next question. How are we doing time-wise? Okay, we're doing well. So here's a question that's, obviously in the news these days. So let's assume that, as you've been pointing out, that the vaccines are effective with the, quote, original COVID-19. What do we know about their effectiveness with the variants? And, specific, of course, we hear in the news about South Africa, the South African variant regarding the AstraZeneca vaccine. So I don't know who to call on first for this one. But who would like to discuss?
Maybe Shamaguti is quite astute in all this data.
Okay,
good. You can answer, please.
Go ahead, Shamaguti.
Prabhu is so kind, like he knows it all, but he's just giving an opportunity to his daughter to say something. So I would say like this. So actually, very good question, and it's a valid concern. So it is a fact that viruses do change over time. So again, there is no shying away from this fact that viruses are changing. And we all know the flu vaccine. So every year we have to take a new flu shot. The flu shot has to be revised because it has to match with the circulating strain, because the flu virus mutates very rapidly. And on the other hand, the MMR vaccine, so MMR is like the measles, mumps, and rubella. So the virus doesn't mutate at all. So the vaccine that was developed 10 years ago is still good to go, and it gives us protection as it is. So regarding COVID-19, it is mutating, and there's no doubt about it. There are new strains that have been detected in UK. There are strains detected in South Africa and even Brazil. And there are at least 10 to 15 mutations which are being reported. So there are 10 mutations in the spike protein in the UK strain, and the South Africa and the Brazil strain has more or additional mutations on top of it. So because all these vaccines actually used spike protein to raise the antibodies in our system, any change in the spike protein would likely cause reduced efficacy or altered efficacy in these vaccines. So I can give you an example to understand it in a little non-technical way. So for example, if I get a mRNA vaccine, by the way, just a side point, I took both the doses of Pfizer, and I'm as of now safe and healthy. So, okay. So for example, I get the mRNA vaccine, which I already did, I did take both the doses of Pfizer. So let's say we get the mRNA vaccine that has the code for making a protein, which is X, Y, and Z. So then our body recognizes that viral protein with XYZ code, and it makes the antibodies which are against XYZ protein, correct? So anytime when the virus will infect us with that XYZ spike, the body will recognize that, the antibodies will recognize, oh, here is the virus, let me kill it. And the virus will be killed. But what happens in due course of time, the virus the spike in this case actually changes from XYZ to XYY, for example. This is all examples. So then this virus infects us. The XYZ antibodies in our system that were produced by the original COVID vaccine would not recognize this XYY strain of virus, and the antibodies or the prior vaccine will actually become ineffective. So having said all this, there is preliminary data actually got recently into the news about the AstraZeneca vaccine, though they have not published any peer-reviewed paper. But they say that the protection is actually reduced substantially with the new strain, and this is with AstraZeneca. And they tested it in South Africa, and in South Africa, this new strain is actually the predominant strain. So it is logical that they don't see any efficacy of AstraZeneca vaccine on people living in South Africa. But actually, they do expect some level of protection, at least to prevent hospitalization and fatalities, basically. So it's not necessary to throw the vaccine right away, at least in the nations where this strain is not predominating, and also the studies are in progress. On the other hand, Pfizer actually, I was looking at the research paper yesterday. They published in Nature Medicine this paper, where they have shown that Pfizer actually shows promising results in neutralizing even the variant viruses. But again, having said all of this, since the viral landscape is continuously changing and evolving, and also the studies are pending and in progress, it is very it's premature to comment on whether the current vaccines will be completely effective, or they will be completely ineffective, or they will be partially effective, partially ineffective. I would say that we should just wait a little bit to comment on this particular thing. But overall, AstraZeneca versus Pfizer, there are variable results. And it should be noted that these vaccines, the technology is such that it can be easily manipulated in the laboratory right now to produce more effective versions of any potentially resistant mutations that are coming up in the virus. So it's not difficult to change the virus if needed. And it's exactly like flu virus that we have to take shots every year. So it's quite premature to say what is going to happen. We have to just wait till more research is done.
Okay, thank you. Madhavananda,
So,
you want to add to
yeah,
that?
I just want to just add a few things to that. That first of all, whenever a variant comes, a new mutation, naturally it comes because the virus is also dealing with its own existence. So if we start attacking with a particular medicine or a particular vaccine, then it will change its form to just exist. So when this change happens, it's not that everything is 100% changed. As she said, XYY, XYZ to XYY. So still some recognition will be there to some degree, and may not be what it was, say 95% efficacy. It might come down to a lower efficacy. This is one point. The other point is it may not be that only the variant will attack you, because already the previous one is still existing and it is in abundance. So it may not be that the vaccine is unable to cover everything for the new variant, but it will still affect or offer immunity against the original vaccine, original virus, which is also in circulation. It's not that it's like this has gone away and now this is only the new virus. It's not like that. So from that angle also, it will be prudent to take this vaccine. And of course, in South African study, their efficacy dropped down to 22 or 23%, which was very low as compared to the previous one. So naturally, they have taken a call that they will reject this vaccine and take up some Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But again, these are studies which will be ongoing and will be wiser as time comes. So at present, just for one study, we need not reject and we should take it. This is my recommendation.
Thank you. So we have a few more minutes. I guess this is a good question for both of you, since you've both taken the vaccines. What about the side effects? Now, Madhavananda, you did already comment on it briefly earlier in our discussion. But what else? We will hear sometimes on social media. They'll put together, one after another. This was terrible, and this was, we'll hear about, some bad reactions. We also hear about non-reactions. Where I work, many people have taken the vaccine, and most of them said it was kind of like a walk in the park, or what is research show about this, rather than just anecdotal evidence, proof by selected instances? What is research showing about the side effects?
So as I mentioned earlier, Shamagopi, you can give the expert comments later on. As I mentioned earlier, the mild side effects like injection site pain, some fever, some headache, maybe even chills. These are known. Like one of our doctor's wife, she is also a doctor. She took and she had swelling all over body. But again, by one simple medicine, she was okay. So there will be some side effects which are seen, but many times they are blown out of proportion on the social media. Like one more thing I want to caution devotees here is that when the trials are going on, or when the data is being collected, at that time, suppose somebody is taking a vaccine or a medicine, during that period, something else happens. A person dies of heart attack also. That is also categorized as an adverse event. So and many times, and then later on it is proven that okay, this was coincident. So many things which are generally blown out of proportion, they are the coincidence at that time and not exactly because of the vaccine. And that part should also be known to all our devotees, that do not fall for that kind of propaganda, that it causes genetic material mutation, and it can cause your life and so many things, cancer. Those things are many times coincidental. They're just recorded because at that time the person is under trial. But so far in India, there's no death reported. We have already given nearly 4 million doses already. But no serious side effects have been noted so far. So this is my take.
Thank you. Sham Gopi.
Prabhu, thank you so much. So I would start with nothing in this material world is safe. Padam, padam, yad vipadam na tesham. Even when we board an airplane or driving to go to work in a car, we are skiing, hiking, bungee jumping, go-karting, roller coaster rides. Anything we do has risks. So any pharmaceutical product, including vaccines, are also not completely risk-free. As Madhavananda Prabhu already pointed out, there will be some side effects. WHO by itself says that there is no such thing as a perfect vaccine. But what, as people with intelligence, what we have to do is we have to evaluate any medicine or vaccine in light of their benefits and weigh how the benefits actually outweigh the side effects. So as Madhavananda Prabhu already said, that there is a system actually started by FDA and CDC in 1990. It is called as VAERS. It is called as Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. So while the trials are going on, anything that happens is actually reported to that system, VAERS. It's a completely voluntary system, and people with even mild effects can report it to VAERS. But as Madhavananda Prabhu already said, that not all adverse events reported are actually in fact caused by vaccination, and sometimes they are blown out of proportion. So I would just like devotees to get educated about these 5 categories actually in which side effects can fall. I mean, the reasons why the side effects can happen actually fall in 5 different categories. The first one is vaccine related. So which is the direct side effect, which is caused by vaccine itself. The second one is vaccine quality defect related. So what happens, sometimes the vaccine is good. There is nothing wrong inherently with the vaccine, but there is a poor quality of the vaccine lot that has been produced. So it's a manufacturing defect. So sometimes adverse effects can happen because of that. The third could be immunization error related. So the medical practitioners who are administering these vaccines to us, they could be lousy sometimes. So sometimes there is improper sterilization of the needles, reuse of the needles and syringes. There could be injection at a wrong site, or there could be ignoring the contraindications, right? So if the nurse or the practitioner, they do not consider the past history of a person, like the person is allergic to XYZ things, or they have underlying health conditions, it could lead to a side effect, right? Or the most common side effect that happens because of improper storage of the vaccine, like because vaccine has to be stored at a particular temperature, it has to be stored or diluted in this particular way, but the medical practitioner did not follow those guidelines. So these are all immunization error related adverse effects. And the fourth one is immunization anxiety related, and I am the one person in that category. Like, I couldn't sleep a night before when I knew that tomorrow is my shot. Like, so I have that nervous reaction even after the vaccination. It was more psychological than physiological, I would say. So sometimes that happens. And as Madhavananda Prabhu said, the fifth one and the last one is the coincidental event. So coincidental means, like, we all know, right, that 2 or more events are happening at the same time, but they are not causally connected, means the one has not caused the second one. So we have to evaluate, the CDC actually investigate each of the adverse event that is reported to this VAERS, and it actually finds out whether it is vaccine related or any of these 5 things related. So for COVID-19, the side effects, so I have actually written an article, and maybe it's shared on the GBC SPT website about the percentages of the side effects that people had encountered after COVID vaccine, and they generally range from mild to moderate. And the mild included like low-grade fever, local pain, injection site pain, and redness and swelling at the site, or moderate like high-grade fever, or sometimes the pain actually shifts from the injection site to even nearby joints and headache and body chills. And actually, I got little like fever, and I would say my symptoms were little moderate, like not mild. So I had like fever and chills and headache and little tiredness. So I had to take Tylenol, like, and I didn't go to work the next day. So I would say I had some effects of the vaccine, but major conditions like severe reactions, like that requires hospitalization or cause disability or death, people are not dying of vaccines. Like, and those who are, like, there were reports like in Norway and other places that the entire population that got wiped out, like in the hospital, like 50, 80 or 90 people died after vaccination. It's not related directly to the vaccine. Actually, those patients had all pre-existing illness and they were all above 80 years old. So I would say that it is not predictable that how everybody would respond, like who would have moderate reaction, who would have mild, or who would have severe reaction. There is no one size that fits all, actually. So I would say that CDC actually advises all of us that if we follow contraindications, then we can minimize or mitigate the side effects completely. So if any one of you are planning to take a vaccine, and if you have any side effect, like any allergies to any vaccines or injectable therapies, or if you have any underlying condition like diabetes or taking particular medications for a particular disease, maybe inform your doctor, and it's best for your doctor to judge for you that it is safe or not safe to take the vaccine. So I would say, like, as we are ending, right, like, so Krishna says that we have to surrender with intelligence, like we don't have to surrender our intelligence. So we have to always make a call and make informed choices, knowing if the knowledge is reliable and not, and do what is needed to keep our body and soul together. So that's all what I would say. So,
well, I want to thank both of you so much for taking your time. It's getting a little late in India, and it's early for you, Sham Gopi, in America. It very, very helpful. We did cover the questions that we got, the main questions that we got from around the world of devotees that were sent in ahead of time, and I wish that all the devotees can remain healthy, and our approach to the COVID-19 on the GBC Strategic Planning Team has always been to, err on the side of caution. Prabhupada signed every one of his letters, hope this meets you in good health. And although, there's so many different opinions and this and that, why not do what is on the side of caution? And that's been our approach for practically the last 10 months of presenting this information to devotees. So you can also, if you wish to know more about what was presented here today, there are 2 articles on the GBC Strategic Planning Team website that Sham Gopi authored along with her sister, who's also in a PhD in the medical field, and other devotees. It can be technical at times, but it is thorough in its presentation. And if you wish to know more about what was presented today, you likely can find it there. So thank you very much, Madhavananda Prabhu. Thank you very much, Sham Gopi Devi. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.